It was late when Sam, a weary trucker, pulled onto the long stretch of highway. The road was quiet, and the night felt unusually still. The only sounds were the hum of his truck and the occasional crackle from the radio. He had been driving for hours, his eyelids heavy with fatigue. A break would do him some good, but there wasn't much on this lonely stretch of road. As he rounded a bend, a figure appeared in the distance, standing by the side of the road, thumb outstretched. Sam slowed the truck, eyeing the man through the windshield. He seemed harmless enough, just a guy in a worn jacket and a cap, looking for a ride. Sam had seen plenty of hitchhikers in his years on the road. He rolled down the window. "You need a lift?" The man nodded and climbed into the passenger seat without a word, his face partially hidden beneath the brim of his cap. Sam gave him a quick glance but focused back on the road. "Where you headed?" Sam asked, trying to make small talk. The hitchhiker shifted in his seat, his voice low. "Just out of here. Been down this way a few times." Sam nodded. "Yeah, I've been on this route hundreds of times. Not much out here but empty roads and trees." The hitchhiker let out a slow, almost mournful sigh. "That's what people think. But you know, there's a lot of folks who don't come back from this stretch of road." Sam furrowed his brow, glancing over at the man. "What do you mean? It's just a quiet route. Not dangerous." The hitchhiker's eyes glinted strangely in the dim light of the truck's interior. "Oh, it's quiet, all right. But there's something out here, something that makes people disappear. I've seen it happen." Sam gave a nervous chuckle, trying to brush off the unease creeping up his spine. "I think you've been watching too many scary movies." The hitchhiker didn't laugh. Instead, he stared out the window, his tone growing darker. "I'm serious. People think they're just passing through, but they're not. They never make it. I've seen it happen. A woman once picked me up. Said she was in a rush, just like you. She drove down this road. Never came back." Sam shivered slightly, though he tried to stay calm. "That's just coincidence. It happens on roads like this. Not every weird thing means something's after you." The hitchhiker turned to him, his expression unreadable. "Not coincidence. There's a reason people don't return from this place. It takes them. And sometimes it comes for you too. It waits." The air in the truck grew colder. Sam swallowed hard, but he didn't want to show he was unnerved. "Don't worry," the hitchhiker continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "It comes at night. And when it is, it doesn't stop until it's done." Sam's knuckles tightened around the wheel, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror. Everything seemed fine, but the air felt wrong. Suddenly, the truck jerked as if something had struck it. Sam slammed on the brakes, but when he looked, the road was empty. He glanced to the passenger seat. The hitchhiker was still there, staring straight ahead. "Did you see that?" Sam asked, his voice shaky. The hitchhiker didn't answer, just stared out the window as the truck continued down the road. Sam felt a cold sweat forming on his neck, his nerves tingling. The hitchhiker's earlier words echoed in his mind. As the minutes passed, Sam started to feel like something was wrong. He didn't know why, but the truck felt empty, even with the hitchhiker sitting beside him. It was as if the air itself had turned heavier, colder. "I think I'm going to drop you off at the next exit," Sam said, trying to shake off the unease. The hitchhiker gave a small, unsettling smile. "Sure, that's fine. I'll get off up ahead." A few miles later, Sam pulled up to the side of the road near a small intersection. He slowed the truck and glanced over at the hitchhiker. But when he turned his head, the man wasn't there. Confused, Sam looked at the empty seat. The door was still closed, and the air in the truck was silent. He hadn't heard the man leave. There were no footsteps, no sounds of movement. The passenger seat was as empty as it had been before. Sam's heart raced as he realized the hitchhiker was never there to begin with. He hadn't seen him get out, and there was no sign of him anywhere. Frozen with disbelief, Sam sat in the truck, staring at the road ahead. He couldn't explain it, but he knew something strange had just happened. The man, the one who had told him those chilling stories, was gone. With a trembling hand, Sam restarted the truck and drove off, the night feeling eerily quiet. But as he glanced in the rearview mirror, he thought he saw a figure standing at the side of the road in the distance. The same figure. But when he looked again, the road was empty. The cemetery gate groaned open, metal protesting against rust and time. The moon hung low, casting a pale glow over the crumbling headstones. "This is so dumb," muttered Aaron, gripping the flashlight. "Scared already?" teased Jess, the self-appointed leader. "We stay until midnight, take a few pics, and we're out." "Easy." "Yeah," chimed in Lily, her voice less certain. "Just a dare. No big deal." The group shuffled deeper into the graveyard, the air growing colder with every step. Midnight struck, the chime of a distant clock fading into silence. Then came the sound, soft, heart-wrenching sobs. Aaron froze. "Did you hear that?" The others nodded, their faces pale. The sobs grew louder, echoing between the graves. Jess raised her flashlight, its beam landing on a cluster of shadowy figures kneeling by empty graves. The teenagers approached cautiously. The figures didn't seem to notice them, their cries filling the night. Jess stepped closer, her bravado wavering. "Hey, are you okay?" The closest figure looked up, its face hollow and pale. "We mourn what we lost," it whispered. "What do you mean?" asked Lily, her voice trembling. The figure pointed to the empty grave before it. "This is mine." The teenagers exchanged uneasy glances. "Yours?" Aaron asked. The figure nodded. "I was walking home one night. The street was dark, but I thought I was safe. I didn't see the car until it was too late." It shuddered. "No one found me until morning." Another mourner looked up, its eyes sunken and sorrowful. "Mine too," it said, gesturing to another empty grave. "I went hiking alone. They warned me about the cliffside, but I thought I knew better. The ground gave way. I fell, and fell." Its voice trailed off into silence. The teenagers stood frozen as more mourners began to speak. Each told a story of choices made, warnings ignored, and lives lost too soon. One by one, the mourners turned to the teenagers, their eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. "We don't mourn for ourselves," one whispered. "Then, who?" Jess asked, her voice barely audible. "For you," said the first mourner. The words hit like a punch to the gut. "Us?" Aaron stammered. The mourners nodded. "Your choices lead you here. Take care, or the graves will not stay empty for long." Panic set in. "We have to leave," Lily urged, grabbing Jess's arm. But the mourners didn't move to stop them. They simply watched as the teenagers stumbled back toward the gate. The sobs faded, replaced by an eerie silence. Outside the cemetery, the group paused to catch their breath. Jess turned back, her flashlight sweeping over the graves. The mourners were gone. "Was that real?" Aaron asked, his voice shaking. "It felt real," Lily whispered. "Too real." Jess stared at the cemetery, her bravado completely gone. Maybe we should be more careful," she said, her voice unusually soft. The others nodded in solemn agreement. As they walked away, the moonlight revealed faint footprints leading back into the cemetery, as if someone, or something, had followed them out. The coastal town of Blackwater had always been a quiet place, nestled between jagged cliffs and an endless sea. But one evening, a thick, unnatural fog rolled in from the ocean, swallowing the streets and homes whole. It came without warning, smothering the town in silence. At first, the townsfolk thought it was a strange weather anomaly. But as night fell, whispers began to spread of shadowy figures moving within the fog, silent, watching, and uncomfortably close. Claire, a young woman who had returned to Blackwater to care for her ailing grandmother, was one of the first to notice the strange occurrences. Her home, perched on the edge of the cliffs, gave her an unobstructed view of the fog as it rolled in each evening and retreated with the dawn. Her grandmother, bedridden but lucid, warned her, "Don't go out at night, Claire. The fog is cursed. It's the sea god's wrath." Claire dismissed it as the ramblings of an old woman, but her curiosity grew. What could a curse possibly have to do with the weather? The second night, the fog returned, denser than before. As Claire locked the doors and drew the curtains, she heard faint footsteps outside. Heart-pounding, she peeked through the window and froze. A shadow stood in the fog, barely visible but undeniably there. It didn't move, didn't speak, just stood, facing her home. She backed away, trembling, but the moment she blinked, the figure was gone. The next morning, Claire decided to investigate. She visited the town's oldest resident, a fisherman named Samuel. His house was cluttered with fishing nets and artifacts of the sea. When she asked him about the fog, his face darkened. "It's no ordinary fog," he said. "Long ago, this town betrayed the sea god. We stole from him treasures from a shipwreck that belonged to his people. The sea god cursed us, vowing to reclaim what was his. The fog is his reminder, and those shadows? They're his messengers." "What do they want?" Claire asked. "To drag us into the sea," Samuel replied grimly. That night, Claire stayed up, watching as the fog crept closer. She placed a lantern by the window, its warm glow pushing back the oppressive mist. But just as she began to relax, she saw them. The shadows were back, more of them now. They moved slowly, their outlines vague, like specters. One by one, they gathered near her house. She felt their presence in her bones, an unnatural chill that gripped her heart. They didn't knock, didn't call out, just waited. The fog pressed against the windows, and for the first time, Claire understood the truth. The fog wasn't just hiding them. It was them. The next day, Claire searched the town's archives, poring over old maps and records. She found mention of a shipwreck over a century ago, the Silver Siren. It had sunk during a storm, and its treasures were salvaged by the townsfolk. Among them was a golden trident, said to be the sea god's sacred artifact. Claire knew what she had to do. If the trident was returned, perhaps the curse could be broken. With Samuel's reluctant help, Claire located the trident, locked away in the town's crumbling church. It was heavy, encrusted with barnacles, and radiated an unnatural cold. "This won't be easy," Samuel warned. "The sea god doesn't forgive easily. You'll have to go to the cliffs and offer it back yourself." As the sun dipped below the horizon and the fog began its nightly advance, Claire made her way to the cliffs. The trident weighed her down, and her fear was a constant companion. By the time she reached the edge, the fog was all around her, thick and suffocating. The shadowy figures emerged from the mist, circling her. Their whispers filled her ears, unintelligible and maddening. "I'm here to return what was stolen," she shouted, holding the trident aloft. The ground trembled beneath her feet, and the sea roared in response. A figure rose from the water, tall, impossibly large, its eyes glowing with an ancient power. The sea god. Claire's knees buckled, but she forced herself to stand. Take it back. End the curse. The sea god extended a hand, and the trident flew from her grasp. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, with a deafening roar, the shadows dissolved, and the fog began to retreat, rolling back toward the sea. Claire collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. When the dawn broke, the fog was gone, and for the first time in years, the sun bathed Blackwater in light. Claire returned to her grandmother, who smiled weakly. "You did it," she whispered. "You faced him and survived." But as Claire looked out the window at the calm sea, she noticed something strange. The waves lapped gently against the shore, but deep beneath the surface, a shadow moved, large, watching, and waiting. The sea god had accepted her offering, but Claire knew that curses were never so easily forgotten. It was on a rainy night when William first found the mansion. He had wandered far from his village, lost in thought, and the storm had driven him down an unfamiliar road. The wind howled through the trees, and the heavy rain blurred the world around him. But there, through the mist, he saw it, an ancient mansion, looming in the distance like a shadow from another time. Its tall windows flickered with a strange, dim light. Curiosity pulled him forward. He had heard stories of the mansion, how it had been abandoned for decades, how the townspeople whispered of strange happenings in the dead of night. But tonight, William felt drawn to it, as though something beyond his control was calling him inside. He stepped up to the massive, creaking door and pushed it open. It gave way with a slow groan, revealing the darkness within. The air was thick with dust, and the scent of old wood and forgotten time hung heavily. As he stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind him, and he felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. "Hello?" He called out, his voice echoing in the vast, empty hallway. No answer. Suddenly, a soft voice echoed from somewhere deep within the mansion. It was low and smooth, almost melodic, yet cold as the wind outside. "Come closer, young man." William's heart skipped a beat. The voice was not human, not quite. But the temptation to find its source was stronger than his fear. He followed the voice through the mansion, down winding corridors lined with old portraits whose eyes seemed to follow his every step. The floorboards creaked beneath his feet, and the walls whispered in strange, forgotten languages. He entered a large room, its walls lined with dusty bookshelves and strange artifacts. In the center of the room, standing beside a tall, ancient mirror, was a figure, a man, but not entirely. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and his clothes were tattered, as if they had not been touched for years. His eyes, however, were what caught William's attention. They were deep and knowing, the kind of eyes that seemed to look right through you. Who are you?" William asked, his voice trembling. The man smiled, a smile that sent a chill down William's spine. "I am Alistair, the last of the magicians who once lived here. And you, young man, are my new apprentice." William blinked, confused. "Apprentice? I don't understand. You found this place, didn't you?" Alistair's voice was gentle but firm. "That is no accident. I've been waiting for someone to continue my work." William stepped back, unease crawling through him. "What kind of work?" The ghostly figure's eyes gleamed, and the room seemed to grow colder. "Magic, of course. Dark magic, forgotten by the world above." I've spent years perfecting spells, rituals, and incantations. But I cannot finish them alone. I need an apprentice to help me complete my work." William's heart raced. He had heard rumors of dark magicians, those who dabbled in forbidden arts, but he had never believed the tales. Now, standing before Alistair, he wasn't sure what to believe. "You want me to help you?" William asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alistair nodded. "Yes. And in return, I will teach you things that no living soul has ever learned. Power beyond your wildest dreams." For a moment, William hesitated. He had always dreamed of learning magic, of wielding power that others could not even imagine. But now, something felt off. There was a coldness in Alistair's words, a darkness that William could not ignore. But curiosity won out. "What do I need to do?" Alistair extended a bony hand, pointing to an old book on a nearby table. "The first step is simple. You must learn to channel the power of the dead. I will show you how." William's eyes fell on the book. It was ancient, its pages yellowed with age, and the writing on it was written in symbols he did not recognize. Still, he could not look away. "Do not be afraid," Alistair murmured, his voice soft and coaxing. "This is the first lesson. To call upon the spirits, you must first understand them." And so, William began his apprenticeship, learning spells that bent the very fabric of reality. Alistair taught him how to summon shadows, how to speak to the dead, how to manipulate the energy that flowed between the living and the dead. Each lesson was darker than the last, each spell more powerful, and more dangerous. As the days passed, the line between the living and the dead began to blur. William could hear whispers in the night, voices that came from nowhere, voices that felt like they were inside his mind. Shadows moved on their own, and he began to see things that weren't there, figures standing just beyond his vision, flickering in and out of existence. Alistair's influence grew stronger. William could feel the darkness wrapping around him, seeping into his very soul. He no longer recognized the man he had been when he first stepped into the mansion. His thoughts were clouded, his actions no longer his own. He was becoming something else, something more. One night, as William stood before the mirror in the same room where he had first met Alistair, he saw something horrifying. His reflection was no longer his own. The eyes staring back at him were dark, hollow, and cold. His skin was pale, his face gaunt, and the air around him felt icy, as if a life had drained from him. Alistair's voice echoed from behind him. "You are mine now, William. You are part of the darkness, and it will never let you go." William turned to face him, but before he could speak, the ghostly magician raised his hand. "You are ready," Alistair said, his voice filled with an unsettling calm. "You will join me in the world of the dead, as my apprentice for eternity." The room grew colder, and the shadows closed in, wrapping around William like a suffocating blanket. He could feel his heart slowing, the life within him fading. He had become one of them, the living and the dead, trapped between two worlds, unable to escape. Alistair smiled. "This is the price of power, William. You wanted to learn magic, and now you know its true cost." As the darkness consumed him, William realized with a chilling certainty that he had never truly left the mansion. He had only entered a world where time had no meaning, and where the dead would forever be his only company. Captain Thomas Rowe had always been proud of his ship, the Vanguard. It was a sturdy vessel, built to withstand the fiercest storms, and for years, it sailed the oceans, bringing goods and news from distant lands. But one night, everything changed. The crew had docked at an uncharted island, the kind that wasn't on any map. They thought it was just a small island to rest for the night, but as they explored, they found strange markings on the rocks and peculiar, ancient ruins buried beneath the foliage. That evening, a dense fog rolled in from the sea, thick and unnatural. It swallowed the ship, leaving the vanguard in a haze. The next morning, they found themselves surrounded by thick fog and a horizon that didn't look familiar. The sky had a strange tint, and the sea was unnervingly still. The ship's compass spun wildly, as though time itself was fractured. But most disturbing of all was the sound, a haunting, low hum that seemed to emanate from the very depths of the ocean. Captain Rowe tried to steer the Vanguard back, but no matter which direction they sailed, the ship found itself back in the same place by nightfall. It was as if they were stuck in a loop, trapped in an endless fog. Then, one by one, the crew began to disappear. At first, it was small things, footsteps echoing when no one was around, an inexplicable chill in the air. But soon, the disappearances became impossible to ignore. One night, First Mate Harris went to check the rigging and never returned. The crew scoured the ship for hours, but he was gone without a trace. His coat, left behind on deck, still smelled of sea salt and terror. Captain Rowe was losing his grip. He paced the deck late into the night, muttering to himself. He knew something wasn't right, but he couldn't understand what was happening. The fog never lifted. The stars never moved across the sky. The Vanguard was locked in a perpetual, uncanny stillness, suspended in time. The ship felt more like a tomb than a vessel, and the crew's unease grew with each passing day. As Rowe walked the deck alone, a strange figure appeared at the ship's bow. It was a man, dressed in a tattered captain's uniform, his eyes hollow and dark. Rowe froze, his breath catching in his chest. The figure didn't speak, but Rowe knew who he was. The man's face was familiar, yet impossibly distant. It was the former captain of the Vanguard, who had mysteriously disappeared years ago. The former captain raised a finger to his lips in a silent warning before he vanished into the fog, leaving behind only a faint, echoing whisper. "It's too late. You cannot escape." The ship was cursed, stuck between dimensions. The crew were no longer alive in the way they once were, but neither could they die. Rowe realized with growing horror that they were trapped in a time loop, unable to move forward or backward. The island, the fog, and the endless sea were nothing more than a cage, a place where time had no meaning, and once you entered, you could never leave. The crew would continue to disappear, replaced by new souls who would make the same tragic mistake. In a final act of desperation, Rowe attempted to abandon the ship. He dove into the cold, black water, determined to swim to the shore, but each time he swam away, the current pulled him back. He found himself washed ashore, back on the same beach, the Vanguard in the distance, always within sight, always calling him back. He wasn't free. He would never be free.